Hello everybody and welcome back. I am your host, Sonat the Hero Type, and this is chapter 3.5 of How to RP1. And basically what we're going to cover in this particular episode is the steps leading up to your first orbital launch after the 3K downrange. We are going to do one launch before doing the 3K downrange launch because I want to talk to you about a really easy way to farm science early on before getting into orbital rocketry, especially since they've nerfed a lot of the low Earth science. It doesn't exist for pretty much everything at this point. So I'm going to show you an easy way to get a good chunk of science while you're still at the sounding rocket point. And by the end of this video, we'll go over everything you need to be prepped and ready for your first orbital launch. Because not only do you need to unlock certain science tabs, you also need to build a bigger launch pad, which is very important, and there's a few other things you want to kind of make sure you have ready and in place before you get to your first orbital launch, especially money, because the first orbital rocket you build is going to be expensive. I won't lie to you, compared by the amount of money you get in this game this early, it's going to take a lot of funding. But we're going to go over that a little bit later. Right now I'm going to show you kind of how to, again, farm science early on. That way you can get stuff unlocked and get it rolling as you're building up to your first orbital launch. That way by the time you're there, you already have more advanced stuff researching. So let's go ahead and launch this biological rocket and get to it. Now, before we get to the actual launch, I wanted to kind of zoom in and freeze frame for a second. The reason I want to show you this is you have three biomes: flying high, space low, and space high. You're not going to hit space high, that's very far away, that's something way later down the road, but it's the flying high I want to talk about. Oftentimes, that science will get missed, the flying high, because you don't spend that much time in the flying high section compared to space low. Now, the reason I wanted to bring that up is because the flying high is worth about 18.4, I believe, while the space low is somewhere around 24.8. So collectively you get about 43 points of science in total for the biological sample. But if you only collect the space low and not really the flying high, you're potentially missing out at 15 plus science points, which is a whole tab, if not two tabs, depending on where you're using it. A couple ways you can farm this a little bit easier is you can make your altitude sounding rockets have the biological sample on them. Just use the bio rocket for the altitude rockets, because as long as the sounding payload amount is correct and you reach the correct altitude, you'll be good to go. All you got to do is recover it, so that takes a little bit longer of playtime, and then the build time is a few extra days, but it's totally worth it. You can also make them a downrange variant, which is sort of what I like to do. That way it's at a more shallow trajectory going into space, so you spend more time in the flying high section. You can do it either way, or you could do it both ways. That's completely up to you. The only thing I just want to make sure you guys understand is don't miss out on that science, because that's going to give you a little bit of an edge on an early game playthrough. Now, if you want to know how to pull that box up, just hit this little blue tab over here next to the experiment, and then up in the corner there's that little information tab right there, the little clipboard and the information tab. Both of these will open up extended information, but it's the little I information tab that shows you that screen I just showed you. I figured just let you know how to look that up so you can use it later. But let's fix our staging and go ahead and launch this rocket so I can kind of show you what I mean about the not being in the flying high for a very extended period of time. Also keep in mind we are going to be fast forwarding through a lot of these launches because there's nothing really to talk about why they do their gliding and flying, and to try to keep as much content I can in the video without making it drag on too long is kind of what I'm aiming for the series. But now that we've decoupled, I'm going to slow it down just a little bit. I want you to see how quickly we go from flying high to space low. I believe it's around 155 kilometers. That's where the change happens. So we're only going to be flying high for just a little bit, and then we're going to be in space low for most of the flights. Now, I screwed my staging up, so we're going to have that annoying parachute thing on there, but don't worry about that. You can just simply disarm it and rearm it. It'll be good to go. But this launch is pretty much complete, so let's pop back over to the KSC so we can talk about a few things like science and what you want to have unlocked. So we just got a bunch of science for just that one launch, and actually we have enough now to grab the last two tabs we need to be ready to do our first orbital launch. Let's go ahead and go to the R&D building and grab those. We need orbital rocketry, but in order to unlock it, we have to unlock this material science tab because it's a precursor to orbital rocketry. So as of right now, we technically have everything we need to do our first orbital launch, but I want to talk about something, so let's zoom in real quick, shall we? Now, just so you're not completely blindsided, this is the engine I'm going to recommend you use for your first orbital launch, and as you see, it costs 120,000 funds just to unlock it. That's what I meant by it was going to take a lot of money to get this first orbital rocket built. You do get a pretty good advance from accepting the first orbital launch contract, but we still need other money to tool it and buy a few other things, so we're going to save some money towards the end. And with that out of the way, let's go ahead and go back to the KSC so we can talk about a couple of things real quick and then roll out that 3K downrange rocket. So I mentioned needing a new launch pad, and I just kind of want to show you how much it's going to cost. It's going to be around $70,000, and it's going to take like 500 something days, close to 2 years. So you want to get that building as soon as possible. Now, the level of your VAB does change the build speed of this particular, well, I guess technically it determines the build speed of all upgrades, including mission control and the R&D building and stuff. So keep that in mind. If you want to make that go faster, you'll have to invest heavily into your VAB, but you still need the technology to keep up, so you also have to invest points into your R&D building. Typically, I go a little heavy into R&D until I get the orbital stuff unlocked, and then I balance it out for a while, and then I just kind of push heavy into the VAB, as your rockets will eventually get bigger and take longer to build. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go to Mission Control and grab a random sounding rocket contract and use some of that money to get myself a little more upgrade points just to speed the process along. Then we'll build that 3K downrange, aka the 3K yeet rocket or whatever I called it, and get that out of the way so I can show you the orbital contracts and kind of what they're going to involve. So I'm going to go ahead and invest a couple of points into my upgrades, mostly focusing R&D, take the rocket for my sounding rocket contract and put it up next to the 3K rockets that I built. Notice I have 2 of them, and it's because in case the first one fails, I'll have a backup to jump to. I can't stress how important it is to make sure you have a backup, especially for a milestone contract. But with that, let's go ahead and get this rolled out to the pad and get to the launch. So, like before, I'm going to speed through a lot of this launch. I just want to show you guys that it actually works, and yeah, that's pretty much the only reason why this is really in here. That, and I felt like we should probably launch it on video because we spent basically an entire episode talking about it. So once this launch is finished, we're going to go look at the orbital contracts, and I'm going to kind of show you a couple of key details you need to watch out for them, understand the deadlines, and why you need to make sure you're ready to go. Since typically, if you don't meet the deadline on that first orbital contract, it usually takes so much funding for the decline amount, you'll bankrupt your program and pretty much have to start back over unless you want to use the cheat menu, but that's at your own discretion. We're not going to be using that in this series. I will say real quickly, there are some orbital contracts that like to bug out, and on those particular contracts, it's okay to use the F12 menu. It actually tells you in the description on the contract. Now, we're pretty much at the end of the launch, and there's actually something very important about the 3K downrange launch. It's one of the bigger milestone contracts early on, but you get a whole lot of funding for completing this because you get so many milestone contracts on top of all the money from completing the 3K downrange contract. I recommend you use that to start building your launch pad, but let's go back to the KSC now and get all that taken care of. So here we are once again back at the KSC, and as you see here, we have 240,000 funds. So we're going to go ahead and just build that new launch pad right away. I'm going to name it something completely unoriginal and just get it started. Now, once you get this started building, you can go to the tech section, and up at the very top, you'll see how many days it has left to build. So if you want to keep track of that, that's a really easy way to do that. So with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and spend a bunch of money on upgrade points. Again, focusing a little heavier in R&D, but some in the VAB. And then let's hop over to mission control and talk about the first orbital contracts. So you'll see we have the first scientific satellite and first artificial satellite. The big thing about the scientific one, besides the fact that it gives you a ton of money, is you have to have the Geiger counter unlocked, which we don't as of yet. But we can pretty much do one biological sounding rocket launch and have enough science points to get it started. And then if you want to, you can grab both of these at the same time and then put a bunch of upgrade points into the R&D section to get that Geiger counter researched quicker. But you may end up running into a spot where you have too much in the R&D building and then you have nothing researching and you're wasting time. And the last thing I want to talk about is this red text here. When you complete this contract, all sounding rocket contracts will no longer be available. So if you still have a camera contract or a biological sample contract, I'd recommend doing those first because they have a high payout and you're going to want all the money you can early in the game. and then do your first orbital launch. Just a recommendation from me. It's just how I would recommend you do it. That way you're not missing out on any contract funding. Now back over to the R&D building real quick. This is the Geiger counter. The thing about this is it's going to say on the contract cosmic ray science, and that does confuse some people. The Geiger molar counter is what does the cosmic ray science. This is what you need to add to your probe when doing the first scientific satellite. Also, if you happen to have solar panels unlocked around this point, you may be able to do the solar satellite and the first scientific satellite in one launch. The parameters are close enough, you can usually make it work depending on how well you do your launch. There will be a handful of satellite contracts, especially early ones you can stack together if you fly them right, but that's something we'll be going over after the orbital launch stuff. So for now, we're going to go through a little bit of a montage, and I will be back with you guys shortly.
Thinking about lying around in your dorm on the 10th floor. Your hazy eyes, where the galaxies come alive, and all of the string lights now reflect right back into mine. I'm caught in the middle of indecisive night. Should I fall asleep or stay up round the innocent last week? You're all I think about. I'll never get you out of my head, lying here alone in my bed. No, and the weather's colder now, but our embers won't die out. Even when it's hard for us to just go up against the thought of getting out of bed. I just wanted you to know. If we get buried 6 feet underneath the snow, come spring will melt away the ice and will grow. If we get buried 6 feet underneath the snow, come spring will melt away the ice and will grow. If we get buried 6 feet underneath the snow, come spring will melt away the ice and will grow. If we get buried 6 feet underneath the snow, come spring will melt away the ice and will grow. All I think about, I'll never get you out of my head, lying here alone in my bed. No, and the weather's colder now, but our embers won't die out. Even when it's hard for us to just get out of bed.
And there we go. We've officially unlocked orbital rocketry and everything we need to do our very first orbital launch. I will have a short coming out in a couple of days that goes over an advanced biological contract that you'll start seeing pop up after you complete the regular biological contracts, which in this particular playthrough, I got orbital rocketry unlocked before I got to the advanced biological contracts, so I'm going to make this short just in case you're not quite as far along as I am when you get those unlocked. Plus, if you play your cards right, the advanced funding will help you build your orbital rocket, so either way, I want to show you guys how it works. That being said, that is the end of the episode, and I want to thank you guys again for stopping by. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, feel free to give the video a like, and if you want to see more, you can always subscribe. I will also be linking Karnas's Discord, and if you click this here under server announcements, it will automatically enroll you into the Sona Watch Party. The reason that's important is all VIP and Sona Watch Party members will have a chance to send me a craft file that I will be flying on a live stream sandbox save. There will be more information on that a little bit down the road, but I figured I'd make the announcement now. This is going to be kind of just for fun, or heck, maybe we'll do like a 12-hour stream and turn it into a charity event. I don't know yet. It will be for RO crafts, so just keep that in mind that you have to be a Realism Overhaul player to enter, but again, I'll put more information about that a little bit later, so feel free to watch out for that. And I want to give a special shout out to N9 Gaming for letting me use Won't Die Out, one of his original musics or songs or whatever you want to call it. That is a song you heard in the montage. I'll actually link the YouTube link to that in the description as well. But I'll go ahead and shut up now. Next time we come back, we will be doing orbital building and orbital launching, and then going into some more advanced stuff after that. This will probably end up being kind of a longer episode because we have a lot to cover. But with that, thank you guys again for stopping by. I have been your host, So Not the Hero Type, and I hope I see you guys next time for some more How to RP1.